it doesn't. Okay.
So I have 3 points. One, a comment, an editorial comment, and then a couple question comments. The editorial comment is that I actually heard the conceding-to-thrive phrase a while back, and it always struck me as a little odd. And in reading your paper, I think I understand now why I didn't really like that phrase, and it's because what you're describing to me doesn't really sound like conceding or thriving. If I were to come up with a phrase to describe it, it sounds to me like liberalizing to survive. I deal in survival models in some of my own work, and so I don't really know what thriving means in a political context.
Winning elections.
Well, are you winning it by 1 vote or 1 million votes? Is that is thriving the latter but not the former? And that's just maybe just a personal preference, but conceding makes me think you're actually you're ceding power then when you concede, and so what you're doing is implementing liberalization of the political system. So on to the other 2 points on the argument. So several people have kind of nibbled around the edges of this, but you have this assumption in your framework here that you can model the ruling party as a unitary actor, in fact. If we relax that assumption, and I think actually we should in the Taiwan case, which I'll get to in a minute, then we get, if there's a divergence between leader and party, we may actually get a fairly different outcome from the one that you're suggesting. And so to illustrate that, let me go to the Taiwan case, where I think my interpretation of what happened from CCK on is a little bit different from yours. CCK lifted martial law and made that decision, but he's dead in January of 1988.
Right.
Taiwan is nowhere close to being a democracy at that point. And so all of the subsequent reforms had to be hashed out in this kind of intra-party KMT party struggle, in which Lee Tenghui is actually in a fairly weak position when he assumes the presidency and is fighting against conservative hardliners most of the way. And so his push for democratization, for forcing out the 10,000-year legislature, for getting the National Assembly to retire and be fully reelected, is in large part an effort to boost his own position within the party, because he's much more personally popular than all of the hardliners. And in fact, we can even look at how Taiwan got a presidential system, a direct election of the president. Lee Tenghui actually benefited most from that. If you had a parliamentary system, you would have had Hao Bo-chun probably leading the country. And so there's a divergence between what I think was in the party's long-run interest, which was at the least to not have direct election of the president, and Lee Tenghui's personal interest to have direct election of the president so that he could kind of basically sideline the competitors within the party. I would also mention that the opposition in Taiwan played a key role as an ally in this whole process, and so Lee Tenghui had an incentive actually to reach out to the DPP and negotiate with them and kind of strategize about how to sideline the hardliners and outmaneuver them. And so rather than this being a story mostly, I'm kind of upsetting your paradigmatic case, but rather than this being a story about CCK kind of having this epiphany, this come to Jesus moment where we've got to save the party, I really see this as much more the kind of an unanticipated result of an intra-party power struggle after the death of this paramount leader. And so that then leads me to the third point, which is I like falsifiable theories, and so to falsify them, maybe I'm venturing onto hazardous ground here, but I'd like to make some predictions. And your theory suggests to me that the CCP, if it's a unitary actor, we should at least see it consider the possibility of political liberalization now or soon. And if you buy my intra-party explanation, then that implies that the prospects for reform are actually more remote if Xi Jinping is actually consolidating power within the party. So his own personal interests, he's not under a lot of pressure from the rest of the party right now, at least as far as we can see. And in fact, it's the converse when there's potentially a power struggle within that elite. that somebody within the party may actually look to liberalization as a way to win, or to at least kind of tilt the scales toward their faction within the party. I mean, there's no kind of ordinary Taiwan-style Dongwai in China that somebody like that could lean on, but there are, in fact, now elections to people's congresses from lower down that have created some factions within the party. And so you could imagine somebody kind of favoring giving people's congresses more authority. I'm being very speculative here, but that would be a way then to that you would get liberalization as kind of an unintended consequence of a short-term power struggle within the CCP elite. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Very quick reaction to your reactions. I mean, first, the survive, thrive. I mean, these are stylistic things that we'd have to think about. But the concession, I still think it's important because it is a concession to the possibility of defeat, which is in itself not insignificant. Which is not insignificant, right? So that's what we mean by the concession. That the absence of the concession is no possibility of defeat. Right? So there is still the concession of this kind of uncertainty, however remote it may be, or however more certain it may be. Larry and I were just talking about this before about the important role that Li Donghui plays, and the politics between the mainstream and non-mainstream faction that then ensued. And again, I mean, I think actually it's our explanation of Taiwan, and I don't really remember it now in the article, but certainly in the write-up, is not to say that there was an absence of struggle within the party, right? That there's actually tremendous struggle within the party. And what even makes the Taiwan case even more perfect is that it's not only a struggle within the party, but we also see efforts informally. I mean, Raymond Myers, people have written about this, conversations between the ruling party and the opposition party early on to smooth out this process. I mean, it really is just a great story. But what's key here is the signal, right? There is still a signal that triggers the struggle, right? And I think
not the death of CCK, then? Or?
No, I think it's. I mean, CCK himself, makes the recognition. There is a recognition that the party should consider, right? Other alternatives given the electoral signals that it's receiving, and it's the signals then to struggle that is the key here. So I don't want to suggest that signals just automatically, you get a signal and then it's a fait accompli, the decision is going to be X. It then leads to the kind of struggles that I think that you richly described. And so therefore, you're right. I think that if Xi continues to consolidate his power within the upper ranks of the party, and marginalize certain factions. And I'm good friends with Victor Schur. I believe factions exist as well, and because he tells me they do. But I agree with you that if the absence of struggle and the absence of a signal that would trigger this struggle, then we shouldn't see any kind of change. Yes.
Actually, just a question. Does your model fit, do you think, Russia with the trajectory from Gorbachev to Yeltsin and then the reversal with Putin?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. We don't deal so much with reversals here, although the Thai case is one of which we're going to talk about the sort of up and down of these kinds of political processes. I mean, I don't know the case all that well, except what motivated the Soviet Union case, the collapse of the Soviet Union and then Russia. What motivated this study was, in part, saying, look, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, you see some of the dynamics happening here. You see a signal, you see a struggle, and then you see what ends up being a collapse. But what motivated this study was really saying, look, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, CPSU, had essentially waited beyond its best before date. Right? And so the CPSU, in terms of a fate of an autocratic party, is the one you want to avoid. And then it's that then that informs how we think of Taiwan as having chosen to concede the possibility of defeat before its best before date. Right? But in terms of the the reversals, I can't. I mean, I wouldn't